Bless you, dear ones. Thanks be to God who redeems us and calls us as one to be his light bearers to all the world. Jesus is alive, and his light is shining through you. Let your love continue to illuminate this darkened world. Because he is shining in you, all the world will know that God has not forsaken us. We continue to be his people, the sheep of his pasture, and always within his care. If you haven't heard, next Sunday we will have a drive-in service at the church. The time will be 10 a.m. Make sure the FM radio in your car is working and figure out how to tune it to a specific frequency, which we will tell you when you arrive. Then check your email and our website throughout the week to see how to prepare for this event. If you have been shut up at home all this time, I suspect you may be feeling rather useless by now. Let me suggest a solution I have always offered to shut-ins throughout my career. Begin a ministry of prayer. Every problem you care about deserves a prayer. God cares about these problems even more than you do, and nothing great ever happens unless it is doused with a healthy amount of prayer. Through prayer in the safety of your own home, you will accomplish more than you ever dreamed possible. And as you bless others in prayer, you will be blessed yourself. That's what prayer does. It releases blessings all over the place. Speaking of prayer, please remember the Spratt family today. Ryan may have been exposed to the virus, which means his family may be exposed as well. As you may know, there are some elevated risk factors in the family, so please pray that there has been no exposure among them. You may want to pause the video here to lift up that request and any other need upon your heart. Lift them up to the Lord who loves us so much. And we will resume this session with Ron Muth singing a lovely rendition of the Lord's Prayer.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Ron, for sharing with us in song. For the message today, I'd like to read to you from 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 4 through 9. Paul writes to the Corinthians saying, "Hence, as to the eating of food offered to idols, we know that no idol in the world really exists, and that there is no God but one. Indeed, even though there may be so-called gods in heaven or on earth, as in fact there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is one God, the Father, from whom are all things, and for whom we exist, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom are all things, and through whom we exist. It is not everyone, however, who has this knowledge. Since some have become so accustomed to idols until now, they still think of the food they eat as food offered to an idol, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. Food will not bring us close to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat, and no better off if we do. But take care that this liberty of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak." This is God's word for God's people. Thanks be to God. You know, if you've ever gone to an investment advisor, there was surely some discussion about your level of risk tolerance. Some investments, along with the expectation of earning wealth, also have the potential of losing money. The question is, how comfortable are you taking that risk? Some investments can earn more than others, but come with greater risk. So your advisor wants to understand how much risk you can comfortably tolerate so that your investments can get a decent return while also letting you sleep at night. Not everyone has the same level of risk tolerance. There's a scale that runs from low to high. Some are willing to endure a great deal of risk. Others are okay with moderate risk. Others want no risk at all. But of course, risk management applies to more than just your investments. Every facet in life involves some level of risk, whether it's crossing the street or trying the sushi or even getting into your car. As I record this, we are hours from the first commercial manned spaceflight in history. Would you take such a risk? Are you glad there is someone who would? I'm talking about risk because we've all been living in a much riskier environment than we've been used to. And as the economy opens up further, the element of risk will increase. Now, some of us are chomping at the bit for life to return to normal. They say the risk has been blown out of proportion and they are ready to resume life as they knew it back in early March. Others of us with lower risk tolerances or perhaps with risk factors are even more worried. The chance of a second wave of the virus means that they still want to hunker down, take no chances, continue to self-isolate. So in recent days, you've seen another kind of social distancing. It's actually more of a social divide. And the divide is between those who want to restore life as normal and those who want to remain in place until a cure or vaccine is found. And both of these groups are looking rather askance at the other, each not understanding the other side's position. And the difference is probably the result of our differing risk tolerances. Some of us can abide more risk than others. This also has some implications for our congregational life as well. How soon do we resume services as they were? Will they ever be as they were? And if so, how soon do we get there? I suspect it will be too slow for some, too early for others. So perhaps it's appropriate for us to examine how Jesus handled risk. On one hand, Jesus had absolute assurance in his Father's care. Regardless of what happened to him, he believed that it was the will of God and therefore for the best. Risk was not an issue for Jesus because he believed the Father was watching over him. Jesus touched the lepers, for instance, and healed them. And though the disease is contagious, Jesus was not a man who calculated the risks of doing so. On the other hand, Jesus was not interested in taking unwarranted risks. You'll recall Satan tempted Jesus by suggesting he throw himself off a high place. After all, the devil said, God promised he would keep you from all harm. You believe the Bible, don't you, Jesus? But Jesus responded with another biblical precept. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. So here's the thing. While we trust in God's love, absolutely depending upon his care, we do not test God's care needlessly. God gave us intellect enough to discern what is a necessary chance and what is a foolhardy risk. So let's go back to the passage I read at the beginning. The issue was eating food that was offered to idols. In the Roman world, it was at nearly every public feast that food was offered or dedicated to some god or another. The Corinthians were divided about the morality of taking part of this feast and this food, especially since it was nearly impossible to avoid it. Paul explained that the mature Christian understands that there is only one God, and since these other gods don't really exist, there is no harm in eating this food. However, for some newer Christians who recently emerged from the world of idolatry, this created a crisis of conscience. For them, eating this food was just too close to the lifestyle they left behind. So for them, eating this food was like backsliding into the sinful culture they just recently forsook. To them, eating this food felt like they would be losing their salvation. Paul says there's no harm in eating this food. Christians have the freedom to do so, but he advises the mature Christians not to flaunt this freedom in front of those who are not ready to receive it, because doing so is harmful to the spiritual well-being of others. I believe this same tolerance and understanding is essential as we navigate the risks before us. Some of you may think wearing a mask is unnecessary, and I'm not going to argue the issue with you, but I would simply ask you to consider doing so for the comfort and sense of security of others. Do you have the grace and consideration to make that concession? On the other hand, some of you may be upset that so many people are pushing ahead, rushing to open things up, when the risk of the virus spreading is still a very real thing. And again, I don't deny the risk is real, but many are finding the cure is worse than the disease. Please understand that no one can deny the cost of this shutdown has been extraordinary, and we cannot judge those who are paying a much higher price for this shutdown than any of the rest of us. For them, taking a risk is acceptable because the alternative costs them everything. So in short, let's be kind to each other. No matter how we perceive the risks before us, we will put our trust in God to see us through. But we will avoid unnecessary risks and not put God to the test. So let us treat each other with the same kindness and consideration which Paul offered to the Corinthians. We will be understanding of those who want or even need to restore their civil liberties. We will also be mindful of those who want to stay safe. However we feel about the risks, be gracious to those who think differently, and do not become a stumbling block by insisting others believe as you do. As for Bay Church, we are devoted to meet your spiritual needs regardless of your risk tolerance. We will offer the drive-in services beginning in June. We will open up the sanctuary for worship when state provisions deem it safe enough to do so. In the meantime, if you are risk-averse, we will continue to address your spiritual needs as we have been. Through our website, emails, newsletter, video messages, and phone calls, we will make sure that you remain an integral part of our church. We will not leave anyone behind. We are one church, regardless of how or where we worship. That is our commitment to you. That is our commitment to each other. Our individual approaches to the future may diverge. Our differing tolerances to risk will lead us to different paths, but we remain united. Why? Because we love one another. Because the Spirit of Jesus makes us one. And that's the good news in all of this. The Lord who made us one is bigger than this disease, larger than our differences, more powerful than our fears, and God will see us through. And we will see each other through. That's what love does. Aaron Stevens is going to close our worship today with the singing of a benediction. So take care, dear friends. We will see you soon.
Good morning, everyone. I thought you would enjoy one of my other favorite pieces. I have so many. I guess I should stop calling them favorites, huh? It's called The Lord Bless You and Keep You. It's a little bit different than what I sang from high school, but I'm going to do a little bit of a shorter version of Peter Lutkin's The Lord Bless You and Keep You. I hope you guys enjoy. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace, and give you peace. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you, be gracious. The Lord be gracious, gracious unto you. The Lord bless you and keep I hope you all enjoyed. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.